I'm Mr. Frog, this is my show, I eat the bug.
Welcome on in, everyone. I hope you're all doing good this afternoon, evening, or morning, or night. We are back with another fabulous episode of the Ferret Cafe Podcast, done or recorded live Thursday nights, every other Thursday night. This week, we got a doozy. We're going to talk about something that happened to me this week, and we're going to determine if I was the asshole. We're also going to discuss how the NFL turned out after the draft. And we'll finish it off with the Batman character tier list, because I'm super original. So, I was going to talk about the fall TV show, but we didn't finish the show in time, so that'll be next episode for sure. So we'll see how I feel when it all wraps up. We are on the last episode, so it's not like it's gonna take like 5 years for me to finish it, you know. And I also 100% completed another Crab's Treasure today. Thank you. I give myself pats on the back. Yes.
They're sexy.
Yes, thank you. It wasn't all that difficult, but you know, it was a good time. It was a good time, and I'll talk about it more on the weekend, on Ferret 64 on the weekend. So get ready for that. If you haven't yet, swing over to the Discord, reply to my picture of me saying 100% baby, and say GG. Yeah, I want some of that love. I didn't get a lot of love when you're playing it on Thursday or Wednesday, and I beat bosses in one go. Where was my love at? Does that make me the asshole for wanting some love? I guess we'll find out. For the first section of the show, here we go. This will be a kind of visual, I guess. Where is my desktop? There it is. Alright, so the reason why I've pulled up the whiteboard here is because this story needs a little bit of visual representation here. So as you all know, I do a lot of driving for my work. I drive all over the place. There's a certain intersection that I pass quite frequently that's burned into my brain. And I usually don't have like any problems, you know, traversing it, but today was a different day. Or, well, not today. It was actually, what was it? Tuesday this happened? And I wish I had the foresight to get the video footage from my dash cam, but I did not think about doing that until yesterday, and it was already overwritten. So, yeah, it's one of those things that for the future, I will. Oops. Oh dear. For the future, I'll remember to do that if something does come up. I'm still pretty new to the whole like dash cam thing. Give me 1 second here. There we go. That'll help. But how's everyone doing? I hope everyone's doing well. Welcome in. Lucy, Lukester, Kenobi, Crazy, Callie. Hope you're all doing great this fine afternoon. I would like to make a petition to demod Callus for not listening to YemmytheFerret. But he's right here. He's listening right now. Unless he's lying. Unless he's lying. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, let's get started. So let me set the stage here. Also, I haven't gotten any GGs in the Discord. Am I the asshole for asking again? Alright, so the intersection... It's not like your basic intersection. So there is a... See, Callus isn't listening because he just put him in the chat here. Actually, let me zoom out here. Zoom out. That'll be better. So the intersection, this is a one-way. So essentially, you can only go one way on this street here. Coming from the side is a two-way, of course, because that's just the normal flow of traffic. So up top, we have a one-way street, okay? On the left, we have a two-way street with a turn. There's a little turn lane here, okay? That doesn't matter. Over here is the park, which we will label as P, okay? There's a crosswalk right here. There's a crosswalk right here. The weird thing is that there's a crosswalk. Actually, this needs to... Okay, this is... I've already messed up a little bit. Hold on. Let me remove that. This kind of juts out a little bit more. The park's a little bit wider. There's a crosswalk that goes kind of like this. Okay? Coming from the bottom direction, there are 3 lanes, okay? And it's a one-way street, but there's 3 lanes. So we have, boom, a turn lane right here. Okay? We have a lane that goes straight-ish, but it's kind of like curved because you gotta get into the one-way street, right? So you have a turn lane here that goes it turns. You have the one lane here that crosses. They both cross the crosswalk at one point, but the middle lane goes towards the one way that we talked about. That's up. And then the other lane is just a right turn. Okay. And there's 2 lanes of traffic coming from the right. Okay. Not too difficult, right? You know, there's several traffic lights. There's also a crosswalk here. This isn't going to matter in the long run, but they're just for the sake of continuity, I guess. So, that's our basic setup, okay? It's not too difficult to understand, right? So, I'm driving along, and I'm in this lane right here. There is a car in front of me waiting to cross to go into the one-lane street. Okay, so I'm at the bottom here. We're gonna label this as me with a... Well, that... Alright, let me erase some stuff here. We're gonna label this as me, okay? This is me, and this one is random car that in the long run doesn't really matter, okay? What does matter, and actually I need a better visual aid for this. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second here. Oh, this is gonna be great. Okay, Ooh, this is gonna be a great visual aid here. Sometimes you gotta do some things, do it live, you know? Boom, we have a generic PNG CGI guy riding bike. Okay. There we go. Here he is. Okay, so if you don't know, if you're a bicyclist or, you know, whatever, there are 2 ways that you can traverse through traffic, okay? The first thing is if you're on the sidewalk, you adhere to the laws of the sidewalk, right? So if you get up to an intersection, you wait for the walk sign, right? And then you cross. Or if you are, I don't know, in the bike lane, you yield to the car turning in front of you. You don't just try and blaze through them, right? There's another way to ride a bike, and that's with the flow of traffic, which is what people are actually supposed to do all the time, right? That's an established thing. I think everyone kind of knows if you're a bicyclist, you're actually supposed to be in the road going with the flow of traffic, right? So, if you're at a stoplight, you need to stop. At the intersection, you can be in the lanes. That's no problem, but you need to stop. If you're at a stop sign, you need to stop at the stop signs. You need to stay either behind or on the side of the street. Behind as in behind like a car in front of you, or on the side of the road, so that people can pass you, right? I've had my fair share of run-ins with bicyclists. I mean, I'm not like a terrible person. I don't try to run them off the road. I try to give them their space. So, normally I have no qualms with people riding their bicycles on the street. It's actually how you're supposed to do it, especially if they're motorized, right? So, the bicyclist, represented by generic PNG, man riding bicycle, is stopped here, and he's kind of chit-chatting with the person next to him. And you can kind of tell that this guy is, he's a firefighter. He's got the fire department shirt on, so we'll paint it red, okay? He's a firefighter, all right? That's going to be a key thing for this whole thing here. So, the guy's chatting with whoever's in the car. Maybe he knows them, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's explained to them what he's going to do at this intersection. I don't know, because I am here. I am listening to a podcast. I'm not paying attention to what this guy's doing. I see that he's there, and he's in the turn lane. He's in the lane that goes left, okay? So he should go boop-a-doop-a-doo and go left, right? Well, kind of more at a diagonal, but still. He needs to go left, right? Can we all agree on that? If you're take out the equation of it being a bicycle. If you're in the left turn lane, you're supposed to turn left, right? Not right, left. If you're in the left turn lane, okay? So here he is, and you expect him to go boop-a-doop-a-doo and go across the intersection to the left and go on his merry way to the left, right? No, apparently not. Apparently I'm supposed to have some sort of ESP and know that he's going to go from the left turn lane, and as traffic starts moving, he lets the person in the car in front of me, it's a red car, doesn't really matter, but he lets the person in front of me go ahead, and then he merges onto the crosswalk and starts to go straight across, okay? At this time, we are about right here, and I am right here, okay? And I stop. I'm not going super fast because I know there's a bicyclist there, okay? And I stop, and I don't honk or anything like that, but I stop, and I'm fairly close to him at this point because I was expecting him to go whoop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doop-a-doo, but instead he goes straight into the crosswalk, and he proceeds to go into the into the straight on the top here. But at this point, I am pretty close to him. I'm not going to hit him because I'm not an idiot. I don't speed my way through intersections, okay? But I'm close enough that he obviously got a bit, he got a bit nervous maybe. I don't know. So at this point, I stop and I let him keep going, and then he gets into the road. And of course, there's parking on the side here, so he's kind of more off to up here. This other person's gone already. They've already done their business. They don't care. Right? But here I am kind of, meandering around, and I'm getting back up to a little bit of a speed. It's a 25 mile per hour zone in all directions, so it's not like I'm going to speed up too much. But essentially the bicyclist, I'm kind of following him because there's cars in the parking lanes on the side here. So, all through the side there's these lanes of parking on either side, as it normally is. Actually, I'm on the wrong level here. So essentially, these are parking spots here on the sides of this area. So So the bicyclist has to kind of be in kind of the middle of the road here a little bit. And I'm not going to like try and zoom around him, right? Because there's cars on either side and, I don't want to, hit a car or anything like that, obviously. So as I'm kind of like meandering behind him and I'm getting ready to like pool around when there's room, he's doing like these hand motions that he's like, kind of like when you're angry and you're kind of like talking to yourself and you're kind of pissed and you go, what the and you're like moving your hands around. That's kind of what he was doing, right? Maybe he was on the phone and talking to someone. I don't know. I don't think so. And he's in front of me and he's, kind of looks behind me a little bit, or behind him, and he's like kind of like mouthing words. And I don't know what he's saying, obviously, because I'm inside my car and I have a podcast on. But I turned down my podcast as we're about to pass, you guessed it, the fire station. Woo! So the fire station is a little bit farther down here. But I'm on the wrong one again. So the fire station is a little bit farther down here. But there's other buildings like in the front here. There's like a courthouse or whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the story, the context of the story. So he's pulling into the fire department to, I don't know, start a shift or continue a shift. I don't know. And you know what? I don't have anything against firemen, of course. I really don't. But while I'm driving by, because I see him pull into the fire department, I roll down my window and I yell, "Hey, you were in the left turn lane." And I pass him and he kind of looks at me a little bit bewildered, and I go by. I don't say anything else. I don't swear at him. I don't do anything. I just say, "Hey, you were in the turn lane." Yeah, I didn't say left turn. I said, "You're in the turn lane. You were in the turn lane." And I almost hit him because instead of going to turn, he went straight to the crosswalk to go straight up. And then he went back into the street. Would it have mattered? Okay, now you might be wondering. Would it have mattered if he had been in the crosswalk? There's a sidewalk that goes along the side of the road, as you do, and then there's also a sidewalk that goes into the park. Okay. I did it on the wrong level again. Hold on. We gotta redo it. I'm new to the whole, like, talking while drawing thing. It's a beautiful picture, really. I mean, you gotta see it to believe it. Would it matter if he was in the crosswalk? Yes or no? No, it would not matter, because he would have had a don't walk symbol on the other side of the road. Because of how this intersection is set up, and there's cars going one way across the road that will cross the crosswalk, okay? So even if he was in the crosswalk, he shouldn't have gone either way, because he would have had a do not cross sign. If he was over here, he would have had a do not cross sign as well. If he was here, he would have had a do not cross sign. If he was here, he would have had a do not cross sign. Either way he goes across this road, if this light is green, he has a don't cross sign, or it's saying don't walk, okay? So, essentially, either way, this guy is, in my opinion, in the wrong. And I mean, if I did hit him, it really wouldn't have been my fault either way. It bewilders me that a person who is a firefighter does not know the rules of riding a bike, or maybe they just are just so used to riding their bike in the city that they don't really pay attention to that stuff. They say, "Oh, people just ride around me, right? Or drive around me, right?" Well, yes, but also, like, it's way more dangerous for you, by the way. So that's the thing that really got under my skin, and that's why, I mean, I would never have yelled out my window for any other reason, until he pulled into the fire station with his bicycle, and he had the fire department's like lettering on his back. I wouldn't have said a single thing. But because this is a firefighter who should know better, who obviously has been riding this bike in the city for a while now, you should know better than to cross a lane, two lanes of traffic when you have a don't walk sign. And You should know better if you're a bicyclist and you're in the main road to follow the rules of the road. It would be illegal for me to drive my car in the left turn lane and go straight. I'm liable to cause an accident. Well, guess what? You're on a bicycle and you're riding your bicycle straight across the street in the left turn lane. Guess what? That's also kind of illegal. It's not following the rules of the road. So when someone pulls around and smacks you while you're in the middle of the crosswalk, it's not your fault. Plus, I do have a dash camera, which I so wish I had saved the footage from, because it would have completely showed the whole scene without me having to reaccount it. Plus, video proof is very good. But if I had accidentally hit him on the way, I would have had the dash cam footage to show, hey, he was in the left turn lane when I pulled up here behind red car. He was in the left turn lane, and he went straight across with no indication, no hand signals, no nothing. But apparently, while he's riding his bike, he gets to curse me out and whatever, do little hand signals, and then pull into the fire department. Right? He gets to go from here and almost get hit, and then go, oh, fuck you, man, you fucking asshole, you almost hit me. And then what does he do? He pulls right in. Come on, let me do it. He pulls right into the fucking parking lot. Okay? Of the fire department, where he should know better. Okay? I'm just saying, he should know better. And yeah, I yelled at him. For the first time in my freaking life, I yelled out of my window. You know, I didn't yell anything obscene, but I was like, hey man, you were in the turn lane, you should have gone left. Should I have pulled over and opened up my I don't carry a driver's manual with me, but should I have pulled over and been like, hey, excuse me, sir? No, I'm not gonna do that, because that's fucking cringe. But I can make sure he knew that he did something wrong by yelling out the window and saying, hey buddy, you're a bicyclist. If you're in the left turn lane, scoopy-doopy-doop, go left. You got it? Capiche? Capiche? So at the end of the day, the question remains, am I the asshole for yelling out my window, for not recognizing what this bicyclist was going to do, for essentially almost running this PNG bicyclist over? But of course I am a good driver, so I did not. Okay? But am I the asshole for almost running this guy over and then telling him what he did wrong while I passed him? That's up for you all to decide. Personally, I don't think so. Maybe he doesn't understand why I was yelling at him. Maybe he doesn't understand what he did wrong in that moment. But it was definitely not my fault. Either way, it was not me at fault. It was him at fault. Like I said before, I will reiterate, even if he was in the crosswalk with his bicycle and he went across the street legally with the crosswalk, he still would have been in the wrong, because the little thing that tells you to go or not would have said don't go, because there are cars moving into the intersection. There's a designated time to go across. And if he did go across without that saying that he could, that's jaywalking. No, the guy did not reply to me. So he did not say anything back. I passed him. I passed him while I was yelling at him. I'm not gonna stop my car and yell at him. You know, this isn't trains, planes, and automobiles. You know. You're going the wrong way. But that's essentially my am I the asshole story, which I think this one's pretty cut and dry. And I will be clear, I did not fabricate any of the information here. This is the best of my knowledge, exactly the chain of events that happened. Bicyclist in left turn lane, goes straight across, thinks that I'm about to hit him, yells at me the rest of the way. Okay? Boom bada bing. Boom bada bing. Now, I will be auctioning off this piece as an NFT. No. No, I won't be doing that. But that'd be funny. It's a joke. I'm gonna explode the guy on the bicycle here real quick. Don't take that out of context. There, he's dead. All right.
Hello.
So, I know what you all are wondering. What's Yemmy's opinion on the NFL draft? Well, let me tell you, folks. I really only paid attention to the first round because, you know, that's kind of the most important round, I guess, even though you do get star players out of the other rounds, you know, obviously. But there's a couple of teams that I would say improved their entire team, or maybe not their entire team, but they improved their team. And there's other teams that I would say didn't do a lot to really make the moves that you think they should make, right? And at this point, I think it's clear what the top 10 teams going into the year are going to be. And I'm going to go through those top 10 teams while also talking about the bottom, 5 teams or whatever, the teams that I'm thinking are not going to be as good. And I was hoping that Greedy Waffles was going to be here because he is a NFL connoisseur such as myself. But unfortunately, he is not here right now. So we'll go through it ourselves, and if he swings by, maybe he will join, maybe he won't. We'll see. To start off, I'm going to start off with the teams that I think did not improve their team with the draft and also are going to be the bottom feeders of the NFL this year. And starting off I'm going to go from semi-worst to worst. Okay? And my ranking might not be perfect, obviously, because I am doing this a little bit on the fly at this point, but maybe let's not even put them in order for the bottom 5. We're just going to name 5 teams that I think did not improve their team and they are not in a good position for the next year in football, okay? And to start off, the first one that's on my mind when I think, okay, you know, what did this team do during the draft? Did they actually get the pieces that they need, or did they kind of fumble it? And also like the team before the draft, were they also in a good position before the draft? And one team that I can say no for both of those, well, maybe not both of them, but at least for one of those, is the Raiders. The Raiders did not have an amazing draft, but they also, they didn't have they had a C-tier draft in my opinion, but they also didn't fill the holes that they needed on the team, and that's because there were so many quarterbacks taken in the first round. They did not get a quarterback in this entire draft, I am pretty sure. Yeah, they did not get a quarterback in this entire draft. Did they fill out their O-line, their D-line, and get some good pieces? Sure. But did they get the main piece, which is a quarterback? No. Right now, the Raiders have... frick. I'm blanking right now on the guy's name. Yeah, I should know him. The Raiders... Oh, they have oh my gosh, Davante Adams. Right now, Davante Adams is the 1-star player on their team, and he's a wide receiver. And it's one of those things that's like, yeah, sure, you have a good wide receiver, okay, a little bit older in general. He's not in his prime anymore. But you know, he's a wide receiver that you paid a lot of money for. You paid him a lot of money to come to Raider Nation, and you paid a lot of money for him to work with Derek Carr, who was only there for 1 season with Davante Adams, and he moved on to the Saints. And who's going to be throwing to Davante Adams? It's not going to be a rookie anymore. Well, I guess it was never going to be a rookie at this point because all the quarterbacks were eaten up in earlier in the draft, of course. So right now they have who do they have as quarterback? They have Gardner Minshew the second as quarterback. I'm pretty sure they have is it like Zach Wilson as a backup or something? No, he didn't. No, Zach Wilson went to the Broncos. I forget who they have as a backup, but just having Gardner Minshew the second, who is a decent enough quarterback, but he's not a starter caliber quarterback. He's more of like a, the guy you bring in to take over for, the person who got injured or the quarterback who maybe wasn't playing as well as you wanted him to, right? That's what the Colts did last year when Anthony Richardson went down with an injury a couple times. He went in there to take the... I mean, he didn't lead the... Like, that's the thing, though. Like, a lot of people love Gardner Minshew, but it's not like he led the Colts to, like, a playoff berth. He led them to a mediocre season that wasn't good or bad. It was just kind of in the middle. And in general, it's like, yeah, that's what a backup kind of does. They fill a void, but they're not going to, like, seriously get you any wins, And I mean, unless, you have that elite, like, Joe Flacco or something like that who shines for a year or two. So what did the Raiders do in the draft? They got a tight end in the first round. And, yeah, he's a great tight end, but with your first overall pick... It's not going to look good down the road. Like, maybe he will have a great season. Maybe he will have a great career. But the Raiders will kind of, I think, regret not either trading up for the draft or anything like that to get a quarterback, because even though they took the best tight end off the board, they missed out on pretty much all the quarterbacks who were worth something in this draft. Now, that being said, you can always take a quarterback who maybe isn't the star of the show, right? That's what the 49ers did with Brock Purdy, and he worked out pretty well. But the problem here is that the Raiders didn't take a quarterback at all. And at this point, I'm wondering if they're just waiting for maybe like a Ryan Tannehill or something to walk up to the door, sign a quarterback for like a year, and then try in the draft next year. The problem is that the draft analysts have already shown, or maybe they've already predicted, that there's really not going to be a good, like, group of quarterbacks for next year, which is kind of unfortunate for the Raiders who are in this position right now. They did take a guard and a corner and a running back and a safety, which, these are all good fits. Obviously, like just like any year, whether a player is going to be good or not in the NFL is to be decided, to be determined. Obviously, sometimes they're busts. Sometimes they take a little while to warm up to the NFL, and then they start the boom in like their third or fourth year. Sometimes they hit the ground running right away and they don't let up, and sometimes they hit the ground running and then they fall off in the next few seasons. So it's one of those things. It's like, yeah, this draft is maybe not going to go down in history as the best draft they've ever done, and it could be the draft that they kind of regret because they didn't get what they needed. Next up, in my who didn't really win the draft, you got the Atlanta Falcons, who, in general, had a good draft, but they went with a quarterback in the first round, which doesn't make any sense. And the reason for that is they just signed Kirk Cousins to like a 3 or 4 year, $120 million contract. And yeah, he's coming off of an injury, and yeah, he's a bit older, but if you sign a player with that kind of money and that kind of, he's obviously a pretty big player in the league. He's led the Vikings to many playoff appearances, and maybe he's not produced to the end. You can also blame the talent around him. Maybe was also letting him down. The Vikings defense last year was pretty bad. But we're not talking about the Vikings. We're talking about the Falcons, who, in general, the Falcons really improved their roster from last year. And it's one of those things like you really didn't have to do much in this draft to pull yourself over the edge. You know what I'm saying? Like you didn't have to do much to just like get a little bit better. You have a few decent running backs. I think they also drafted a running back as well. Yes, they did, which is fine. You always need more running backs because they're not the sturdiest of players. You have your Kirk Cousins quarterback, and I believe they still had a backup as well in the mix. But now you have this new quarterback, Michael Penix Jr. Michael Penix Jr., who is probably going to be a really good player, hopefully. But you won't be able to see him until Kirk Cousins either leaves or gets injured, which maybe it's likely he'll get injured. I don't know. Maybe not. Probably not. Maybe he will, though. And if he does, then we'll probably see Michael Penix. Or we will see Taylor Heineke, because that is technically their backup quarterback. And yeah, the Lions roster is decent. They recently signed Drake London. Or maybe Drake London, because Drake London was on the Jaguars last year, right? No, he was on the Falcons last year. But they do have a decent roster, and I think that this draft showed that they maybe they outplayed themselves. They wanted to take the QB away from the Broncos and away from the Raiders just to shove it in their face, maybe. I don't know. I really don't know. And the rest of the players they took were fine. Once again, it's just like I said last time. It's like we're really not going to know how they do until they start playing. On paper, some good draft picks in here. But in general, I think taking the quarterback in the first round, the quarterback that didn't really need, does bring this draft down for them to like a C tier, in my opinion, as well. Next team to talk about. Who else had a pretty, lackluster draft? Or maybe not even a lackluster draft, but maybe a team that's just kind of lackluster in general, right? Hold on, I lost my page here. Here we are. I think it's a meme at this point, but the Carolina Panthers definitely have not done. I mean, they're definitely not like led by the best owner in the league. I also don't think that they had a great draft either. Right now they have that rookie quarterback. What's his face? Oh my gosh. You would think that the quarterback would be at the top of these lists. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like the most important position in the game. They just drafted him last year. I'm blanking on the names right now because I'm on the spot. So I apologize. He's not even showing up on their player list. Bryce Young. He was at the bottom. Why was he at the bottom of the list? Yeah, so Bryce Young did not play great football last year, but also Bryce Young did not have a good team around him. And when he was drafted, you kind of figured like, yeah, sure, maybe he's an okay draft pick, but he's not. He doesn't have anything around him. They sold the farm to the Bears, which ended up biting them in the ass this year again. And here we are with a team that really just doesn't have a lot of oomph to it. I mean, the backup quarterback is Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle himself, and yeah, sure, he could probably win a few games for them, maybe, but he is a career backup quarterback at this point after a stint with the Bengals. They added Jadeveon Clowney for a 2-year contract, he's a good corner. Like, he's gonna do. I hope that he does good work. I've been a fan of him since he was on the Browns, at least. Also, they have Chuba Hubbard at running back, who is a decent running back. He actually helped out my fantasy team last year. And what they did in the draft was they got a wide receiver in the first round with, I don't even know how to say this guy's name, Xavier Leggett or whatever. And I thought that was a great pick because you're filling the void that you left when you traded off your best receiver to the Bears last season. Other than that, they picked up a couple players that I don't think they really needed, in my opinion. Like, yeah, you kind of always need to strengthen your O-line and your D-line, of course, but I don't think any of the players that they took really jumped out to me other than the running back that they took in the second round. But once again, they already had Chuba Hubbard, who had a really good season last year, or last season. He had a good season last season. So, but, I think that in general they also had like a C-tier kind of draft in general. And the last team that I want to talk about for the lower tier, I don't think any of the other teams had like drafts that I would say were bad per se. But the one that's on everyone's mind is the Cowboys, who they claimed that they were all in this year. They said, we're all in, and dang, we're going to really rock the boat, right? But what they ended up doing was pretty much nothing. They got rid of talent. They didn't really add any talent. And they recently got Ezekiel Elliott back on their team, who had a terrible season with the Patriots. And the last thing he did with the Cowboys was try to do a trick play with Dak Prescott, and he couldn't block to save his life. He got steamrolled, and that was kind of like his last thing that he did with the Cowboys. The funny thing though is that like the Cowboys, they have a good roster either way, but they definitely did not improve their roster this year. They didn't really do anything in the draft that I would say is eye-popping or eye-catching either. They didn't really do much, in my opinion. Like they have holes that they need to fill, like running back and stuff like that, and it's not really going too well for them. I mean, people are still projecting like, oh, they're going to be one of the best teams. They're going to be battling. They're going to be duking it out with the Eagles or whatever.
Hello there.
And it's like, I don't know if this is the Cowboys year. I don't want to be like that guy, like, because everyone hates the Cowboys, But I don't know if this year is really like the Cowboys year. You could say otherwise, a couple years in a row where they've gotten pretty far into the playoffs, and it's like, oh yeah, I mean, Cowboys had a good season, but they had a terrible playoff, stretch, right? They just need to get over that hump, right? But they can't. And I don't think this year is, in general, gonna be their year either. So that's just my opinion. Obviously, anything can happen, but I kind of foresee the Cowboys. I mean, they're not going to be like dead last in their division, I don't think. I mean, they got the Giants and the Commanders in their division, two teams that are not known to be great. But I think they're going to have a tough time getting over the Eagles, and even if they do get over I don't even want to go there because I don't think they're going to get over the Eagles at all. Because the Eagles are one of the teams that had a great draft this year. Let's talk about the top 10 teams coming out of the draft. I feel like these are the most complete teams, the teams that are going to be in the playoffs, football gods willing, right? I'm not going to do these in any particular order. But we gotta start off with the Bears, who, definitely have improved their roster. I mean, look, I'm not gonna be like a Justin Fields supporter, but even Justin Fields, he was a bit rough around the edges, but he put up some pretty good stats in his time. But he obviously wasn't the right fit for the Bears. But then again, you also need to remember, like, he went into that system, I believe it was a brand new coach. I believe the coach got swapped out. He had a good repertoire with the guy they got from the Panthers, which, was something, DJ Moore. But they did add a lot of good players in the offseason. Some of them a bit, maybe a bit aging, like Keenan Allen, maybe a bit injury prone. But I think in general that the Bears had a good draft. They got a great quarterback. And I feel like with everything that they've done in the offseason, it's hard to say that they're going to, not be good next year, right? I mean, unless everything falls apart, like that Nine Inch Nails song, okay? And, the fires start inside the organization. Unless something goes terribly wrong, I have a feeling that the Bears are going to at least be competent this year, at the most. Sure, there's probably going to be some growing pains with a new quarterback, right? But it's just one of those things. It's like, we'll see what happens. Okay, we'll see what happens with the Bears. I have a good feeling about them, but of course, my good feelings are not that great. Like drafting a kicker in the fifth round of the fantasy draft. That wasn't a great call, but it was in my gut, right? It was in my gut. Oh, the Nine Inch Nails song. Without you, everything falls apart. Without you, it's not as much fun to pick up the pieces. It's the perfect drug is the song name. All right, the next team to talk about. Yeah, it's not the hand that feeds. It's the perfect drug. Whoops. All right. I think I need a new cover for my microphone because this one's starting to bubble a little bit, and it's hitting my lips as I talk because you need to be close to a microphone. It's kind of annoying. Okay, the next team to talk about that came out of the draft looking good, and actually in the off season looking good as well. And this also compounds the fact that they were in the playoffs last year, and maybe they limped into the playoffs, maybe not. But it doesn't really matter because they ended up winning the whole fucking thing. And that was the Kansas City Chiefs. And you kind of hate to admit it, but the Chiefs actually improved their roster in the offseason with the draft as well. Mostly with the draft, really. In the offseason, I don't think they really did too much, but in the draft, they definitely improve their team, especially by drafting the fastest player in the history of the combine, which is kind of crazy. The main crazy thing about them drafting this wide receiver is the fact that they traded up to that position by none other than the Bills, who consistently get fucking slammed by the Chiefs no matter what. Okay? For the Bills, who just lost Stephon Diggs, by the way, to not draft this wide receiver and give this player to the number one team in the league still, the Chiefs, is beyond me. I don't know what their GM was thinking, picking up that damn phone and saying, "Oh, sure, we'll give you this draft pick." And the other weird thing is that the Bills then traded down again out of the first round. I don't know what the Bills are doing. Maybe I should have talked about the Bills in the teams that got worse after the draft. But that's besides the point. The Bills, the Bills, who are a rival of the Chiefs, who meet the Chiefs almost every year in the playoffs and get stomped, whether it be a fluke or legitimate like last year. Okay. The Bills traded with the Chiefs so that they can select the number 1, if not the number 2 wide receiver from the draft. Which is insane that the Chiefs got this because they won the fucking Super Bowl without a good wide receiver roster. And now they have a good wide receiver again. Supposedly. We'll see how it turns out. But it just really peeves me that we're just handing the Chiefs these little gifts wrapped in little bows. Okay? Like, oh, you have a bad roster this year? All right, we're gonna count you out, okay? And that puts a fuel under their fucking under their asses fire, right? Oh, you don't have a good wide receiver core? Okay, here's this little gift of a great wide receiver from the draft. Yeah, good idea, Bill. Out of all the teams, the Bills. That's what confuses me the most about this. Because they gifted the Chiefs a great draft. They got the wide receiver that they desperately needed. I mean, maybe not desperately needed because they still have Travis Kelce, and they obviously won the Super Bowl without a great wide receiver group. You know, it's like, okay, maybe they may, you know, whatever, but still, they needed a wide receiver. They needed someone to be a new playmaker. They needed someone to replace these guys with butter on their hands, right? And they got that player. They got the fastest player in the draft, probably Tyreek Hill V2. Okay, hopefully not with the, allegations. And like 50,000 kids, but that doesn't matter. The point is that he was, I think, either the best or the second best wide receiver in the group, and he got given to the Chiefs. All right. The rest of their draft was also decent. They drafted a couple defensive players, a offensive tackle. Actually, they got a few offensive linemen in there, which is maybe not exactly what they needed per se. I think that their offensive line was pretty good last year, but maybe they were filling in some gaps, getting some guys ready for the new year. I would say most offensive line players who are drafted immediately start because, it's just kind of the name of the game, right? Same thing with the running backs. They don't usually sit for years until they come out. Now they're usually in there right away because running backs, and I guess maybe not really offensive linemen, but running backs for sure have like they seem to have a ticking timer. It's like after that like third or fourth year, they start to get too beat up, right? Obviously you have like your outliers, like Derrick Henry, but that's besides the point. So, there you go. The Chiefs, not the winner of the draft, but definitely a winner from the draft. And that win was gifted to them by none other than the Bills. And I will keep bringing that up all the way through this next season because I think the Chiefs are going to be dominant once again in this next season. And they're probably going to go all the way again. Unless the Ravens have something to say about that. Yeah. So the Ravens, maybe they didn't make a huge splash in the draft per se, but what they did do is they improved their roster, which is really all you can ask for, right? With the inclusion of Derrick Henry on the team, which is, maybe Henry isn't like as explosive as he used to be, but he's still a really great running back. We saw last year they kind of started off a bit slow, probably because of that foot injury he had the other season that took him out of the season. But once he got going, he dominated the running scene once again. Maybe not like total domination, but enough domination to be like, yeah, he's obviously really good. They still have a great wide receiver core with Zay Flowers, and the Ravens added in who did they add in? Oh yeah, they still have Mark Andrews, of course. They got rid of OBJ, which is like, okay, whatever, you know. Don't really need him. And of course, you know, they have Lamar Jackson, you know, which is also a star player there as well, who, you know, maybe in the playoffs hasn't played perfect football, obviously. I mean, each year it seems like they are right there, ready to take the trophy home, and something happens, right? But at this point, I think that their roster is strong. I believe they drafted a running back, which is good. They needed one, especially because Gus Edwards is out of the building. So we'll see how they do this year. I'm not going to say I have high hopes for them because I don't want the Ravens to win, you know, obviously because I'm a Browns fan. But I do have, like, high feelings for them, seeing as they obviously are one of the more dominant teams in the league. They just need to get their act together in the playoffs and beat the Chiefs, which is going to be even more difficult this coming year, or this coming season. We're already in the year, this coming season. Another team that I would say improved a lot over this past, off season and draft is, of course, the Houston Texans, who, after last season's, I wouldn't say crazy, but it was kind of a wild ride for them, right? They started off maybe a little bit hot and cold, but by the end of the year, Tank Dell, a wide receiver on the team, Nico Collins, and their rookie quarterback, who eventually won rookie of the year. Is it? Yeah, rookie of the year. Am I going insane? CJ Stroud, thank you. CJ Stroud. They went on a tear that was pretty legendary, I would say. I mean, you know, it's one of those. It's a young team-ish, you know, obviously, and it's one of those teams that you weren't really expecting to go as deep as they did into the playoffs. I mean, they beat the Browns. They beat the snot out of the Browns, and then they obviously lost in the next round to. I think they lost to the Ravens, right? But now they seem to be the Texans are actually all in this year, because you already have a good group of players. You add Stephon Diggs into the soup that you're making, right? And then you also add in a bunch of these rookies who will also really help the team as well. So I think in general the Texans, next to the Ravens and the Chiefs, are going to be the dominant teams in the AFC this year. I could easily see the Chiefs and the Texans maybe going at it in the divisional round, or maybe even the Ravens and the Chiefs. But the main point is that the Chiefs are probably most definitely going to be there in this coming year. Let's switch it over to the NFC. And I've already kind of mentioned the Eagles, and do I really need to talk about the 49ers? Right? Like, those are two teams that are kind of on equal footing at this point. The 49ers went to the Super Bowl last year. Obviously, they lost. But it's not like they didn't have the players to do it. Like, the 49ers roster is already really good. How they lost the Super Bowl against the Chiefs is beyond me, because they have star players all over the place. Christian McCaffrey at running back, and Brandon Ayuk, and Brock Purdy, and all these players. They also have a decent defense. They had Chase Young. They had what's his face? The Joey Bosa. No, not Joey Bosa. Yes. No, Joey Bosa's on the Chargers. It doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter. They obviously have a great roster. They have a great team. Keeping them all together is not easy, because you got to pay these guys, right? Deebo Samuel got a payday last year. George Kittle obviously makes a lot of money for them. You know, and all these players together should have won the Super Bowl, but they didn't. So what do they need to fix in order to get over that hump? It's not Joshua Dobbs, I can tell you that much. But it is, some extra linemen, some extra depth in the defense. I think that in terms of like draft picks, I think they did pretty well with their draft picks. I'd probably give them a B tier. I forgot to rate the other teams, but yeah, it doesn't really matter. And yeah, it's they got the good picks, right? They got another wide receiver in there just in case they lose one of their wide receivers. They got him on a rookie deal. They got a cornerback. They got a safety. They actually got 2 wide receivers in the draft. So they definitely added in pieces and parts. But like I said, I don't think the 49ers were bad last year. It's almost a fluke that they lost to the Chiefs last year. Another team that improved from last year going into this year. I hate to say it because it'll come and bite me in the ass. But Greedy Waffle's in here, so whatever. I do think that the Steelers did improve their roster. Now, quarterback position, not great. Let's be honest, right? They have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And I think Justin Fields will beat Russell Wilson, right? Because Russell has not looked good since he left Seattle. Maybe even before he left Seattle. And really, at this point, like the Steelers have 2 quarterbacks. They don't need another quarterback. So they'd go out and they get an offensive lineman. They get a corner. They get a wide receiver. Pieces and parts that's going to help improve their roster, of course. And in the end, I think that their roster is good. We'll have to see how Justin Fields or Russell Wilson play for the team. I do think they need a little bit more depth in the wide receiver area. But as of right now, I think they have a decent roster that is competent. And I could say the same thing about the Browns as well, which I will talk about now because they are my team. The Browns draft, a lot of people are giving them like C tier and stuff like that, and I guess I kind of agree. I think it's more like a B tier draft, but the one thing about the Browns that I can't stop mentioning is that our quarterback, you know him, Deshaun Watson, is a giant question mark. And instead of keeping on the quarterback who led us into the playoffs last year, Joe Flacco, we get rid of him and add another quarterback who is a giant question mark in famous Jameis Winston, who famously threw 50 touchdowns and 50 interceptions one year. Or was it that? I think it was that, right? And he's never really been like a great quarterback. And Deshaun Watson hasn't been a great quarterback since he took a break from the Texans and then got traded to the Browns. He had a terrible half a season, I guess, with the Browns when he first started. And then last season, you would think that the rust is all off, right? He had a whole season to train. Didn't look amazing either. I mean, he has some good games, obviously, but if you watch those games and you don't just look at the stats, I mean, he's throwing dirt balls. He's losing the ball. Like, these games are going down to the end because of something that he did, interception-wise or whatever. The team around Deshaun Watson is great, especially when you look at it objectively on paper. I mean, you have great people, great core receivers all around him. We just added Jerry Jeudy in there as well, which hasn't flashed. He didn't flash on the Broncos, but you could definitely tell that he was a good wide receiver. It's always good to have depth at those positions. And we still have Amari Cooper, and obviously Nick Chubb is getting is healing from his injury from last year, and hopefully he'll be back to 100%. And we have depth on the roster. We have a good backup in the field with Jerome Ford. We have our defense is pretty stout. We kept on the same coordinator from last year because he was good. Do I agree with everything Kevin Stefanski does as the coach? Hell no. But he's led us to winning seasons, and that is better than we've had in the past, 10 years. So if we can just harness this team and do something, maybe not rely on Deshaun Watson and Jameis Winston to lead the team. I don't know. Maybe something will go right. Like last year, the pieces were starting to be good and work together well. And now we got to kind of restart from square one again. Not Jameis Winston. Deshaun Watson coming off of an injury, major injury from what I remember. He tore his rotator cuff or something like that. So he'll probably need the get the rust off period again, which will of course give him a pass for any interceptions or dirt balls he throws, right? Yeah, okay. Whatever. The other teams here, I'm just going to go through them quickly. The Bengals had a decent draft. I think the Bengals are in a good position. They just got to protect Joey Legs out there, is what I like to call him. And they did that. They drafted another offensive lineman to try and protect Joe Burrow. And I think that it's always a good thing to protect your quarterback because they are the heart and soul of your team. Obviously, they're the main key component to any team out there. So the Bengals did a decent draft. The Dolphins, I don't remember really hearing anything about the Dolphins during the draft. Obviously, they still have a lot of great players on their roster. Tua Tagovailoa is a bit of a question mark at this point, but in general, I think that because I didn't hear much about them, probably means that they didn't really make a huge splash. They just kind of did what they needed to do in the draft, which is obviously good. The Patriots had a first-round draft, and with that first-round draft, they drafted a quarterback for the first time in many, many years since Bill Belichick has been there. And I think that in general, Drake May might just be like Mac Jones Part 2, but we'll have to wait and see. I think he has, obviously, Drake May is a different player than Mac Jones, and Bailey is happy. But it would be kind of funny if it was just like, hey, it's another Mac Jones type player. But I don't think it is. Because, when Bill Belichick was on the Pat McAfee show, he was like, I wouldn't have picked Drake May. And so no shit, you wouldn't have picked Drake May. You're not there. The last quarterback you picked was a flop. Yeah, Mac Jones had one good year, and then you ruined him with freaking, the coaching changes out there. Anyone who says that I'm going to go off on a tangent here. Anyone who says that Bill Belichick should still be in the NFL and working in the NFL did not see the last 2 or 3 years in New England. He just did not do a great job. He brought in staff members who sucked at their jobs. Matt Patricia should never have a job in the NFL again, yet he gave him a job as an offensive coordinator when usually he's a defensive coordinator. It just doesn't make any sense. It ruined Mac Jones. It ruined Bailey Zappi. Now they're on different teams, and now Bill Belichick is gone, and the Patriots have a new quarterback who looks to be obviously better than the last 2 quarterbacks that I just mentioned. Other than that, they had a decent draft, and they are not total winners, but they have a thumbs up. The Jets. I don't really want to talk about the Jets. They have Aaron Rodgers. They bolstered their offensive line, which is definitely what they needed after last year when Aaron Rodgers essentially got taken out of the game 4 plays in. The defense for the Jets is strong, but the offense behind Zach Wilson was not that great. Also, all the parts and pieces that Aaron Rodgers brought in with him did not work out. So I think the Jets are going to have more of a hands-on approach here. They're not going to let Aaron Rodgers kind of decide what he wants to decide what's best for the team, because obviously that kind of led them into the dirt last year. Not completely into the dirt, obviously, but enough into the dirt that they obviously have moved on from a lot of those players that were picked up when the Aaron Rodgers trade happened. So I think now that Aaron Rodgers is kind of stuck in this second year of his contract, the Jets are going to have a more hands-on approach and be like, hey, we're not just here to appease you, we're here to actually win games. And that's kind of what they need to do. And Aaron Rodgers, I don't know how many more years he has left in him. I don't know if he's going to, become a presidential campaign, a presidential candidate
in the near future that could also sink the Jets if he just decides to leave and try to become, what was it, vice president or whatever. It won't work, but whatever. As of right now, the Jets, they had like a C-tier draft. We'll see how they do this year with the roster. The Colts actually had a good draft this year. They took a gamble on one of the defensive players they took, but they have a decent team. I just want to see what Anthony Richardson can do, because last year he was really starting to flash. People were saying that he was going to be, the rookie of the year, and he was going to, take the team to the playoffs. And obviously Anthony Richardson was a bit of a he was a bit of a risky player, I'll say. He was doing a lot of stuff with doing like these runs where he was like essentially like diving over linemen and getting slammed to the ground and stuff like that. And obviously that ended up getting him hurt. I believe he broke his collarbone, if I'm not mistaken. But it'll be exciting to see what he does this year. He's back from injury. He's back on. He's got a decent roster around him. He was flashing last year. We'll see if he loses any of that flash, or if he gets maybe was taught a bit of a lesson. Maybe don't be as crazy as you were in the college days, because obviously college football and NFL football, they run at two completely different speeds. So, obviously he needs to adjust to the new the NFL. We'll see how he does this year. I think once again, he has a good team around him, and the draft was good for the Colts. I don't want to talk about every single team. I guess I'll just touch on a few others. The Buccaneers, Cal's team, adopted team. They signed Baker Mayfield to a big contract, and if you know, you know. In Cleveland, when we paid Baker, that's when he started to suck. And then he played with injury, and then he was traded. And he sucked with the Panthers. And then he moved on to the Rams. And he was okay with the Rams, but not great. Then he moved over to the Buccaneers, and for some reason, he became a new man. One of those players who takes a little while to get used to the NFL and get it up to speed. We'll see how he does with a new paycheck. I think they paid him $140 million to be the quarterback for the team. The draft wasn't like crazy, but I think they had a decent draft. There you go. Okay. I think that's all the teams that I really want to talk about. Everyone else had good drafts, I guess. Titans, Lions, Packers, Rams, Cardinals. I guess the Broncos. I guess. I don't know. There was a lot of interesting picks this year. We have a lot of new quarterbacks who are gonna be on the scene. Not all of them, of course, drafted. They're gonna be playing right away, obviously. But I think that's gonna be an interesting year next season, or this season. But I think it's going to be more of interesting the season after this, because a lot of rookie quarterbacks, they struggle when they get into the NFL. No matter how good they were in college, no matter how good they were at the combine, no matter how good the ratings of the drafts were, a lot of quarterbacks who go into the NFL, they maybe flash for a game or two, but then they get hit down to earth, and teams have footage of them and tape the study, and they make game plans, and they change up their defenses and stuff like that. And it's just one of those things that, like, not every quarterback could make it in the NFL. And obviously there was 13 quarterbacks taken or something like that, something I've seen. And I would say less than half of them are going to be star players. Probably only a quarter of them will be star players, but we'll see who gets that stardom and who doesn't. And it's going to be interesting to see how these teams play. That's pretty much it. The biggest gambler of the draft is the teams with the most draft picks. And I think the Bears took they have the biggest gamble, because they have their quarterback of the future, and they have a wide receiver to help him out. But if he fails like Justin Fields, even though they had great draft stock for the past 2 years, we'll see if they hit on it. And if they don't hit on it this year, you can probably, kiss that GM goodbye at the Bears. He really hanging on there by an ass here, but we shall see. All right. Let's move on to the final part of the show, which is going to be the tier list for Batman characters. Wow. I'm so original. I was originally going to do like, how goofy would it be if I did like, tier list on how much pizza each Arkham or each Batman villain could eat or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I wanted, then again, I don't really want to do something super silly, I guess. But, this is kind of jumping off from Lucy's suggestion of a smash or pass Arkham edition. But here we are. Here we are with the Batman characters tier list. In the first corner, we got Batman, Alfred, Nightwing, Tim Drake, Damian Wayne, Bane, the Riddler, Azrael, Poison Ivy, Catwoman, Clayface, Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Doctor Strange, Man-Bat, Killer Moth, Professor Pig, Kite Man, Ratcatcher, Deathstroke, Firefly, Mad Hatter, Hush, Two-Face, Black Mask, Mr. Faweze, Killer Croc, Jim Gordon, Penguin, Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, Victor Zsasz, Scarecrow, Harvey Bullock, Ventriloquist, Red Hood, Pink Flamingo, and the Calendar Man. So when I got these pictures for these characters, I was expecting them not to just be their torso for most of them. So that's why some of them are just like that. Like Deadshot is just his ripped abs and bulge. So, oops, didn't plan the pictures out too well. But yeah, it's gonna be easier than last time we did a tier list because I actually know the names of all these characters rather than just like looking at a black and white photo of a band and being like, who are these generic white men? It's like, I don't know, the Birds. I don't know. But yeah, essentially we're just gonna go through the tier list. How much do I like these characters? Yeah, do I think they're good characters? Do I think they have a good representation in both in all different types of media, video games, movies, comics, etc. So we're gonna be judging them as a whole. And we gotta start with Batman. We're gonna put him in the C tier for right now. We're just gonna talk about him though. So Batman, So Batman has had a weird life. Okay, when Batman started out, I'll be straight up with y'all. He killed people. He killed the Joker. He killed Napoleon Bonaparte, who I was gonna put into this tier list because he's a bit of a meme. Well, I guess he's not Napoleon. He dresses and acts like Napoleon Bonaparte. He says he's gonna be dictator of the world. It's like the second Detective Comics ever, and Batman like literally shoots and kills him. Right. Essentially, they've called the original run of Batman or Detective Comics Earth 2, so technically it's not like Earth 1, obviously. But Batman has had a bit of a rough lifespan in all different medias. In comic books, he's had rough spans of his time. There was a time where Azrael was Batman for a while, and he was like, because Bane broke his back, and it's just like, okay, those comics are like stinky poo-poo, right? You have the New 52 run of Batman, which is great. It's definitely like, I'm nostalgic for the New 52 because that's when I started like really reading comic books. And I mean, when you start off with a Batman that's as good as the one that was in the Batman run of New 52, it's hard to look at these other ones and not be a bit more critical with them, especially with the newer Batman issues. They just kind of don't have a lot of interesting things going on at the moment. Movie-wise, it's been really hit or miss for Batman as well. I mean, you have great performances like the original Batman from '89 with Michael Keaton, and also Batman Returns, but those movies he wasn't portrayed very well because he's killing people. He kills like 50 Joker henchmen in Batman '89, and he literally kills that one Penguin goon with a time bomb attached to his chest. Like, that's not really the Batman that I know. But then he also had even more rough runs. You know, those are the good movies where he's killing people, right? But then you get into the bad ones where Val Kilmer's Batman. It's like, oh, whatever. And then you have, you know, George Clooney as Batman. It's like, okay, not great, but whatever. And Ben Affleck as Batman was absolutely horrendous. I don't care what anyone says. Terrible performance for Batman in all the different ways. I don't even mind that he like shot the flamethrower guy's backpack in Batman v Superman. He was just a bad Batman in general. He did not fit the mold. But you know, the Batman was really good, and of course the Christian Bale Dark Knight series. 2 of those movies were good, the trilogy at least. So in general, I think that Batman, I don't think he's strong enough to be an S tier because he's definitely faltered in the years. But he's obviously still a great character, and obviously he's my favorite superhero. I know it's a basic bitch thing to say, but I do need to be objective, of course, and put him into the A tier. If this was a list where I was just like, oh, I like Batman, boom, he'd be an S tier. But I think that there's a couple, there's some stretches of Batman's lifespan where it's just kind of been like almost unwatchable. And the Ben Affleck era was definitely one of those times. And there's a couple comic book runs in there that just were not great. There's a couple offshoots of the Batman series that also were not fantastic. But then again, I will say the Batman video games in Arkham Asylum, Knight, and City are great portrayals of Batman. I think they definitely understood the character. Origins is not good, but you know the portrayal of Batman is decent, I guess. The Telltale series games, not a huge fan of Telltale in general, but the first Batman one that I've played, the first Telltale series was good. I don't know if it was an amazing portrayal of Batman, but does that boost Batman up to an S tier for the Arkham games? Well, you also got the animated show also. Alright, S tier, because you got the animated show in there as well. If we were just judging this by movies, it'd probably be an A tier. But since it's movies and comics, it'd be A tier. But since we got the video games and the TV shows in there, I think S tier is good for Mr. Wayne Batman. Next up, we got Alfred Pennyworth, who has had a pretty consistent career, if I do say so. And pretty much every single version of Alfred has been. I mean, he's a British butler. I mean, what more could you really want from him? Obviously, in the comic books, he obviously does a lot more. In terms of like, he actually does a lot of in the field work. In his time as and a lot of the movie versions of Alfred are too old to really do any action, right? Obviously, the Batman v Superman version of Alfred is pretty abysmal in terms of just like characterization. But the Dark Knight version, I would say the Batman '89 through Batman and Robin, like that version of Alfred is actually good. Like, he does a good job there. I think Alfred is like an easy S tier. He's one of the most consistent characters and I would even put him above Batman. He's one of the most consistent characters in all of DC. Like he's genuinely, I can't really tell you a bad version of Alfred Pennyworth other than like maybe the Gotham TV show, but even then I think he's pretty good in that show too. So it's like, well, whatever. So yeah, I think that's a good spot for Alfred in terms of how he is portrayed across media. Dick Grayson, Nightwing, the original Robin. I was really enjoying the Robin comic book run. And then they gave him like he got shot in the head and they gave him amnesia. And even though I thought like it was an interesting, obviously it was an interesting development, and obviously it was an interesting thing to do for the character, it didn't. It just wasn't really an amazing continuation of that series. And obviously they've, looped around on it and now that was during the Rebirth, was the amnesia Dick Grayson with the scar on his head looked like the bat symbol too, which was like very very interesting an idea for them to do. But in general, like, the Nightwing comics are really good. I kind of had a falling out with them during that period, and I know that they've circled around to being back to normal Dick Grayson, so it's not like that big of a deal. But I also don't think that Nightwing's villains are as interesting. I mean, obviously he shares a lot of villains with Batman, but a lot of the Nightwing comic books kind of revolve around like gang crimes, and it's not like super interesting, Obviously there's been some change-ups in there for sure. Throughout the years, if we're looking at like every version of Dick Grayson, I believe the Teen Titans Robin is Dick Grayson, and I love that original run of Teen Titans. All the characters in that show were great, and Robin was one of those core characters who really had a fantastic writing and a fantastic arc to his character. Newer renditions of Teen Titans, not like the Teen Titans Go. I mean, I've never even wanted to watch that, so I have no opinion on that. But Dick Grayson has also had a couple rough patches in his life, including the stint where it's in Batman Forever he shows up, and in Batman and Robin he's in there as well, and it's just not really that great. In The Dark Knight Rises, he's shoehorned in, like, the Robin character is shoehorned in towards the end, really, with that police officer, and the lady's like, oh, you should go with your original name, Robin. And I just wanted to stab my fucking eyes out at that point. The Arkham games, you don't really see Nightwing almost at all until the Arkham Knight, which is kind of crazy. In City, it's Tim Drake, right? And you don't see Nightwing at all unless you play the DLC. In Arkham Asylum, obviously, none of the Robins show up in that one. And then in Night, the whole gang's there, obviously, except for Damian. And even then, like, yeah, he's there and he's got his quips and quirks, but he's fine. And then in most DC media, he's kind of like the stoic kind of character. In Injustice, he becomes Deadman, which is an interesting story for Dick Grayson, obviously. I think in general, I'm going to keep Nightwing in the B tier. In just overall, he's not had as many hits as Batman or Alfred. And then we move on to the Robin with the bow staff, which is Tim Drake. And I will be honest with y'all right now, Tim Drake is not that interesting of a character in my opinion. I think C tier is a perfect place for him. Even in his comic book appearances, he's just kind of like a bland Robin kind of character. At least with Jason Todd and Damian Wayne, like there's some stuff going on there, right? And Robin, Tim Drake Robin, in the comic books more so, he is just like a tech nerd, and he can do anything. In the Gotham Knights game, he like creates a teleportation device, which is not like amazing, but whatever. And in the Arkhamverse, when he comes out, he's the Robin with the bow staff, and he has an okay moveset when you're doing the challenge maps and stuff like that. But I never really thought that his character was great in the Arkham games. In terms of other media that I've seen him in, he's not really that popular of a Robin, even though he's become more of a staple more recently. I don't think he was ever really that popular of a character, and for that reason and many others, I'm going to keep him in the C tier. Damian Wayne, on the other hand, I know this is a bad picture of him, because you can only see his torso, but Damian Wayne, on the other hand, has a lot more interesting things going on with his character, obviously, being the child of Talia al Ghul and Batman, being trained by the League of Assassins, and then being brought to Batman to train in the arts of Batman's ways, all for usually for Ra's al Ghul to be like, okay, now take the mantle, Damian, and Damian obviously learns from Bruce, blah, 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 blah. It's all history at this point. In terms of plot points for Damian, I don't know if he's really used too well. I think he was used best in the original, I say best, but he was used pretty well in the Injustice comic books and in the game itself. Injustice 2, not so much. They kind of pulled back his character a little bit. But in the original Injustice game and the comic series that follows it, he's a decent character. In the newer comic books that he's in, I don't think they give him enough to do. He's kind of either at the Batcave or he just really has nothing to do, or they just don't show him, right? And I even though he is a more interesting character than Tim Drake, I think that Damian Wayne has been kind of underutilized for a lot of the time that we've seen him in the Batman universe. He's one of the newer characters out there. He's not like super new, but he's still one of those newer characters, one of those newer ideas, and maybe he just hasn't reached his full potential. But even in like the animated movies where he's with Batman, like the Batman versus Robin movie and the Batman and Robin animated movie, I don't like his character in those. And then there's also the Teen Titans like versus Justice League movie that he's in as well. It's like, so whatever, it's whatever. So I keep him in C tier. Bane, another terrible picture that didn't get cropped properly. Bane is an interesting one because, as you may or may not know, Bane has some horrible representation in media. He's obviously had better representation recently, but if you think about the Banes that we've seen both in popular media and like movies and video games, he's been given the short end of the stick, essentially. In the original Lego Batman games, he's a side character in every single one. He's not a main villain. In the oh crap, it was on the tip of my tongue and I just lost it. I'll skip it for now, whatever I was thinking of. In the Arkham games, like Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, I don't think he even shows up in Arkham Knight. But essentially in like Arkham Asylum, he's like a quick cameo kind of boss fight. The same boss fight as like the rest of the Titan monsters in there, so it's like not even that like incredible. It's implied that he's dead, unless you get the one of the 3 random final cutscenes of either Killer Croc, Scarecrow, or him grabbing a Titan container. And then in Arkham City, like you do some, you destroy the Titan containers for him, and then you trap him behind like a very weak metal fence, and like that's supposed to be like the big moment. And I think that his characterization is like, I like his design in the Arkham games, but as a character he's got nothing going on, like almost at all. Like everything is either in the backstory or the stuff you already know about Bane. In terms of what I was thinking of before, there was another video game he was in. Well, Arkham Origins he has a pretty big role in, but I also I also think that like he could have just Bane could have just replaced Black Mask in that game easily. Like they didn't need the Joker in there at all, but like in terms of like who would hire people to try and take down Batman, I feel like Bane just being reduced to like, oh, he's an assassin doesn't really make sense. It's the same thing that I talked about with Killer Croc in Arkham Origins as well, where it's like Killer Croc's not like an assassin. You don't have to build him as an assassin. You can build him as like he's the guy who's protecting Black Mask at that time, and you beat the snot out of him and you take him to Arkham, right? that literally, you literally could have axed him from the list of assassins, and I would have been happier about the game. Same thing with Bane. Like, he could have just been, he could have been the entrance like the Joker, where it's like, hey, here's Bane, and he's here to take over Gotham, and you have to stop him. Like, there's so many things that went wrong with Arkham Origins, and Bane was kind of one of those things where it's like, you kind of did him a little bit dirty, but at the same time, like, I guess it kind of slots in with the Arkham version of Bane where he's not all there and whatever, but at the same time too, it's like, well, I don't really like that, the version of Bane that you made before he was, the Bane that we know, so it's like, whatever. In terms of movies, the Dark Knight Rises version of Bane is not good. It is not great. I will be honest with y'all. I don't mind Tom Hardy's performance, but his design is not great. His muffled voice is obviously more memed now than ever. Probably more memed than Batman's voice, Christian Bale's voice. In general, he was just not a great character in that movie, and it all culminates with his death scene where it's revealed that he's just like this lovesick puppy dog to Talia al Ghul, who was just shoehorned into the movie as well. And then he gets shot by Catwoman, and he's dead. And you could also say the same thing for the Batman and Robin version of Bane, and obviously that version is worse than The Dark Knight Rises, obviously. But that version of Bane is pretty bad, where he's just essentially a goon for the entire thing. They totally removed any actual character from his character. In terms of comic books, Bane also does a lot of the same things over and over again, where he takes his group of militant, people, and he tries to take over Gotham, and he beats Batman, and then Batman beats him, right? It's kind of been a bit of a big cycle. It happened during the Dark Knight comics. It happened during the Batman comics. It happened during the Detective comics. It's just a big cycle with Bane. So, objectively, Bane is like a C or D tier character simply because of his representation in pretty much every form of media. He's a cool character, and I enjoy his story usually, but the problem is that his representation has been just so bad throughout the years. Like, even the animated movies really don't do him justice. There's that Assault on Arkham movie, which I do really like, but Bane is literally just there to like throw some cars around or something, and then he gets defeated by Batman, and it's like, okay. And I think the main reason that I'm gonna put him in D tier is just the fact that like he just really has nothing going on in most of the stories that he is a part of in all these different places. I just wish I wish that they would go back to like the Nightfall era where he's new and he breaks Batman's back and he's the first villain to ever defeat Batman, and those are the exciting times. And now it's just kind of like, yeah, he's Bane. There he is. Oh, I was gonna actually say in Injustice, both of the Injustice games, he's also getting like the bad end of the stick as well. In Injustice 1, there's only 2 fights during the main campaign where you fight Bane. The first time is with Batman, I believe, and you beat the snot out of him. And then the second time is I think you're Wonder Woman, and he's a part of like the Injustice League or whatever they called during in that one. And he gets beaten by Wonder Woman there. And then in Injustice 2, the weird thing about Injustice 1 and Injustice 2 is that they completely flipped the characters in the Injustice world around. So now Bane is like back to being the regular Bane that you know. It's just very weird. So yeah, Bane in D tier. Next up, we got Edward Nygma, aka the Riddler. And there's actually been a lot of great performances of the Riddler throughout the years. One of the more recent ones is from The Batman, where the Riddler is more of like an incel. But the performance was good. I think that he became too Joker-esque in his performance towards the end when he was like laughing at Batman behind that glass. It didn't really feel like the Joker at the end of it all, but for the most part during the Batman, the Riddler felt like the Riddler. Same thing with like the Jim Carrey version of Batman. I'm sorry, in Batman Forever, Jim Carrey's version of the Riddler was actually decent up until like the end, where he had the plot to suck the brains of all the people through TV and put it into his head, right? Just kind of a weird plot point there. But everything leading up to that is great, where he leaves the riddles and he, does all the different like contraptions for these little cards that he gives Batman. In the Gotham TV show, I felt like he was a good character, but I remember watching the one episode where he had like, I think it was Bruce and Selina caught in like a cage or something, and he's like meanders on and just lets them go, and it's like, if this was a real villain, he wouldn't have just let them go. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But I think that the portrayal of the Riddler in that show is good enough. I think that the actor who did the Riddler did a great job. Other versions of the Riddler in the Arkham games, kind of the same way as the movies. Arkham Asylum has a good Riddler. He's not really present, but he talks to you every so often, and he leaves all those little trophies around, and it's kind of fun. And in City, he's more hands-on, where he's actually impacting the story a little bit, and of course he has a giant side thing where you have to solve his riddles and save the police officers, right? And I think that that's probably, in terms of like video game wise, that's like the best that the Riddler is in Arkham City. In Arkham Origins, I think that the lair that they set up for him is good, and how there's like the original Riddler trophy is there, and I think that's a good like thing. But for the most part, in terms of like character, the little enigma clues that he leaves around, the little things you collect, not really that interesting. And also, like, his character himself is like not that interesting in the Arkham Origins game until you get to that end scene where you find his little Riddler hideouts, which is pretty cool. And then in Arkham Knight, they kind of went a bit crazy with him, a bit too crazy, I would say, where he sets up all these things underground for the Batmobile to do. And I know that's just game design, but in terms of like clever Riddler characters, like, him putting on a fucking mech suit to take on Batman and Catwoman just didn't really vibe with me. I mean, sure, it's a cool sequence, but it doesn't really fit the character. I understand that he's under a lot of stress because Batman has been beating him every step of the way, and in Arkham City, he traumatizes him with the explosive hat, but it's disarmed, but But yeah, the Arkham Knight version of Riddler, like, I like the design, and I think that in general it's a good, character, but it just didn't hit it. It just didn't hit the mark. The original, I'm not the original, but the Batman 60s version of Batman, which I kind of forgot to talk about before, but the 60s version of Batman and the Riddler is actually pretty fun. Not every time the Riddler shows up is great, but I think for the most part, great performance for the Riddler. Man, I'm on the edge of putting him in S tier, but I'm trying to think of the comic books I've seen him in. He does have a pretty major part in Batman Year Zero, and I thought that whole storyline was really good. There was also the Battle of Jokes and Riddles, which was like a terrible storyline. I mean, it's not like the Riddler was bad in that comic book series, but he also wasn't like great. I think I'm gonna keep him in A tier. I think that's a good place for him. Azrael, this is a character who, when he originally stepped into the Batman comics, obviously he was a bit of a anti-hero, and then he dons the cape and cowl, and he has one of the worst bat suit designs ever. More recently, they've been leaning into his affiliation with Saint Dumas and like the kind of religious angle of his character has been emphasized more, leading to one of the better stories in Batman, recent Batman, which is the White Knight series. He shows up in the Arkhamverse, doesn't really do much, you know. He's like an Easter egg in Arkham City, and he has like a couple of training missions in Arkham Knight, but you know, his moveset was never amazing when you played as him, and you know, whatever, you know, he didn't really do much. In terms of the comic books, he has some good stuff going on now when he does show up, but he's not around enough to really, you know, to really have any oomph to his character, in my opinion. I think in general, Azrael is below Bane in D tier. Poison Ivy. We'll start off with Batman and Robin for Poison Ivy, where Uma Thurman plays Poison Ivy. I think that Uma Thurman does a decent job as Poison Ivy.
Ooh, don't make me horny.
But in general, Poison Ivy in Batman and Robin just has a really weird plan, and also like randomly her plants eat her at the end, which doesn't make any sense at all. In the Arkham games, Arkham Asylum, she is okay. Her boss fight's pretty good, but you know, she's really only there to add like the most annoying enemies in the game, which are those little pods that attack you long range. In Arkham City, she actually has a decent storyline with Catwoman, but it really is just a really short, like, okay, I'll help you this once, you know, kind of thing. And then Arkham Knight, her story culminates with her sacrificing herself to make the cure for the fear toxin in the air. So she does have a good ending for the Arkham games. In Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, she is reincarnated as a child. I haven't played the game, but I can already tell you that that is not great of an idea. In Gotham, she starts out as a kid, and then, like, she turns into, like, an adult over, like, the course of, like, a few days. It's very weird. Not great. Comic book wise, she really hasn't been a villain for quite, like, she is still a villain technically, but she's more of an anti-hero now, especially more recently with how she sacrificed herself for Gotham, and the Harley Quinn show, obviously. You know, I think it's like the second season, she does have like a world domination plan, but she ends up not going through with it, right? So it's one of those characters that has kind of morphed and changed throughout the years. And even though not all of her appearances have been great, I think a majority of them have been good. And I think the Harley Quinn show does bring her up a bit from the C tier to the B tier, simply because of, you know, the dynamic that Harley Quinn has with Poison Ivy. That brings us to Harley Quinn. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit because we're talking about it. Harley Quinn is an interesting one because she also has had a major change in her character throughout the years. You know, back in the animated series days, and before that, she was just the Joker's girlfriend, or, you know, with the Joker. Into the Arkham games, you know, she's with the Joker still. But it really was towards like that era where the Harley Quinn show was first coming out. The comic books also had a bit of a change with her character as well, with the Harley Quinn show. And then in the Arkham games, of course, she's a solo act, but she's still looking for the Joker. So it's kind of a little bit after the Arkham games, where, like Arkham Knight, is where Harley Quinn's character really changed, right? And I think it changed for the better, because now she wasn't just the dumb sidekick character that was following the Joker's every move. You know, now she's her own character, her own woman, whatever. I think the Harley Quinn show definitely makes a good effort to show her struggle between being like an anti-hero and being a villain, right? And I think that a lot of her character does revolve now around being more so a good guy. You know, you look at the Injustice game, or games, I guess. You look at the more recent Harley Quinn comic books, especially the New 52 run, where she is it's essentially just the plot of the show, but she's, in an apartment and she's, trying to be good. All right. Movies wise, we really haven't had like Harley Quinn in too many movies other than the Suicide Squad movies and then Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey was trash. The original Suicide Squad was trash. The Suicide Squad, pretty good. I think I'm gonna put her in A tier. Catwoman. Catwoman is another, like, more like an anti-hero character. Obviously, in love with Bruce Wayne. I've liked most of the Catwoman appearances. Even in The Dark Knight Rises, I think she's decent enough in that one. But nothing really trumps the Batman Returns version of Catwoman. That is just one of the more better versions of the character. But then there is the opposite spectrum where you have the Catwoman movie, and Halle Berry plays Catwoman, and it is one of the worst movies ever, I would say. It definitely was not good. There was also a video game based on that movie, not good at all. Her Arkham appearances, Catwoman's Arkham appearances, are actually pretty good. She shows up in Arkham City. She has her own side story going on. I think they did a great job with all that. The ending fight with Two-Face is a bit annoying, but what you can do. And then in Arkham Knight, they changed her character around, and she's really just like almost like a damsel in distress being held by the Riddler. But I think what they did with the character was actually pretty good in that one. I think her moveset is decent. In terms of like other appearances of the character in the comic books, it's really just been like, hey, me and Batman, we're dating, and maybe we will, maybe we won't. There was a whole run of, I think it was Batman, it was during the Rebirth saga, where Batman and Catwoman were going to be married, and there was like, it felt like a whole year of comic books leading up to like this marriage, and then it just didn't happen. Like, neither of them showed up to the wedding, which I guess is like, I don't know, somewhat poetic, I guess, but it was just more annoying as a reader more than anything. Yeah, I think Catwoman is like a B tier character in terms of like just general just everything all together. In the animated series, she was pretty good. Can't complain there. Yeah, I think that's a good B tier is a good place for her. We're running out of time. I think I start going through these a little faster. Clayface. If you don't know, you know now. Clayface is my favorite character in Batman. In the comic books, not favorite character, but favorite villain in general. He's always got like a unique thing going on. The only stain on Clayface's list of appearances is the Gotham TV show, where they essentially just made him like a generic, like, oh, I can change my face and look like anyone kind of character. They didn't really embrace the more monster nature of his character. And there's a lot of decent Clayface comic books. There was a short span of Clayface being the main villain in the Dark Knight New 52 run. Clayface was a big part of the Rebirth detective comics. Stop it. There was a decent amount of Clayface in the Lego games, obviously. They obviously made his character bigger and better as he went through, like, he could now transform into actually being big, you know. He didn't show up in the Injustice games, or I don't think he was even in the comic books, really. The animated series was some of his best stuff in there. I loved his time in the animated. Obviously, that's one of the reasons why he is like my favorite character. So in the end, I love Clayface, but I will say that he has not had enough appearances to really justify putting him any higher than B tier. Maybe we'll start to see him more as the years go on, but I think that he is He's a great villain. I've liked his stories. I've liked his appearances, and Arkham City was a decent appearance from him. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Try and make it a little bit shorter here. Deadshot, another pretty bad picture of him, just his chest and groin. Deadshot, how do I say this? Deadshot is a character who they know, like, the people who work with Deadshot know what he's, they know what to do with him, right? Because he's a sharpshooter. There's really only one thing that he can do. He can shoot well, right? He's the best shot in the world. He's never really translated into, like, Batman stuff too well. I think the best use of his character is in the Suicide Squad. And even then, like, the portrayal of Deadshot by, like, Will Smith is not great. Deadshot in the Suicide Squad game, from what I've seen, is fine. In Arkham City, he's not like a great character in that. I think he has a decent side plot, but his boss fight's not really that crazy. And the comic books that I've read with him not been super entertaining. Also, the Arkham Origins had just kind of reduced him to being a side character. He should have been a main character in that game, but instead he was just like a side assassin where you pretty much take him out in one mission where he's doing like a bank heist, and it's kind of dumb. So I think I'm gonna put him in C tier. Hugo Strange had a big role in Arkham City, which probably is what boosted his popularity, honestly, because before then, who really knew about Hugo Strange or Doctor Strange? But that is really the place to be if you want Doctor Strange, because that is, in Arkham City, that's like the best version of the character, in my opinion. Even though in the Gotham show, he obviously has a big role, but they also kind of, in my opinion, broke the entire lore of Batman by having Doctor Strange be the one to make every single Batman villain, from like the Joker to Clayface to I'm pretty sure he made like Mr. Freeze and Killer Croc, and it's like, why are we doing this, right? Why are we doing this? Other than that, I really haven't seen Hugo Strange in many other locations, which is why I'm going to put him in the D tier, above Azrael at least. Like, the time with him in Arkham City is great, but I haven't seen anything else Doctor Strange related, Hugo Strange related. I'm sorry, it's Professor Strange, not Doctor. Professor Strange related, that has been really captivating. Man-Bat is a silly guy. Kirk Langstrom transforms into Man-Bat.
Oh,
He had a 4 comic book run on the Dark Knight comics, which was not good. I was really hoping for better from the character. Other forms of media that he's in, like, he's literally killed off in the Injustice comic book prequel comic, like, really quickly. Amanda Waller's putting together like another Suicide Squad, and I think it's the Red Hood or someone comes in and just immediately kills everyone. So, like, whatever. He has a small appearance in the Arkham Knight. Obviously, he has one of the more memorable storylines simply because he jump scares you the first time that you see him. Other than that, Man-Bat's kind of like a background character. Doesn't have a lot going on. I think this is our first like F tier in terms of like, he's really not been in a lot, and what he has been in, it has not been like, he's not been like the main focus, obviously. And Kirk Langstrom, he does show up in Gotham Knights, but he's dead. He's already dead in like the first level. So it's like, wow, what a great portrayal of the character. There you go. Also, No, I'm not gonna say that. Killer Moth. Killer Moth has like zero presence in the Batman universe right now. I think it's mostly because he's kind of a silly, early Batman villain, He has a cameo in Arkham Asylum. He's already dead. He has a short stint in Batman Bad Blood, but he dies. As a character, he's not that interesting in the comic books. I don't think he's been in any live-action versions, any movies, live-action. I think that's an easy enough F tier for his portrayal in characters. Next up, we have Professor Pig, another bad picture of him because you can't even see the pig mask.
What?
I actually really like Professor Pig in terms of, newer Batman villains. He's exactly what the Batman the Batman universe kind of needed. He's not super new, obviously, but he's new enough, and he's gotten kind of a rebirth since Arkham Arkham Knight, obviously. But he's also had a couple of comic books that have been really cool. But the unfortunate thing is that the one one comic book that I really remember where he was a really strong character in, the entire comic book was a dream sequence. And that was kind of annoying. I know that he shows up in Gotham, the TV show. I don't think I saw that performance, but I did see how the character looked, and the character looks good. I do like Professor Pig, but in terms of media presence, he's probably right above Azrael. Kite Man, another pretty abysmal picture. Boy, I wish I had cropped these better. Kite Man is an interesting one because before the Harley Quinn show, if you ask someone, hey, who's Kite Man? They would be like, huh? And now when you say, hey, it's Kite Man, they go, oh, the funny guy from Harley Quinn. Oh, the guy who banged Poison Ivy.
Oh!
Kite Man has an interesting villain backstory where he's just a normal goon, and then all of a sudden he's a master with kites. And of course he builds a giant kite and attaches it to his body, right? Really, the only time that you see Kite Man other than the comic books is in the Harley Quinn show. And in the Harley Quinn show, he's a great character. It's not a lot of representation, but what is there is good. I honestly would say that it's better than Tim Drake, really. Crazy enough. Next up, we have Ratcatcher. This is another one who has had a bit of a resurgence lately because of the Suicide Squad, where Ratcatcher is one of the main characters. Can control rats. In the Arkhamverse, Ratcatcher is dead by the time that Arkham City comes around. There is an Easter egg they can find that explains that he was, I believe he was killed by Penguin. It was either Penguin or Joker who kills him, or it was Two-Face. I forget which one exactly, but they do describe how he was. Yeah, I think it was Joker because you find it in the industrial area. Anyway, so he's already dead. There's no representation at all in there. The only representation we got really for Ratcatcher is in the Suicide Squad, which is it's a good character. I think it's a strong narrative there for the character. In terms of if this is the original version of Ratcatcher and not Ratcatcher 2, in the Suicide Squad, it's an easy F tier for representation simply because they're not represented almost at all. Less goofy than Killer Moth though, so I'll give him that. Next up is Deathstroke, famous for his time on Teen Titans as Slade, but also famous for his boss fight in Arkham Origins. Not so famous for his boss fight in Arkham Knight. But also famous for just kind of being a general badass in the Batman universe. Has had good representation pretty much across the board. I can't really tell you a bad version of Slade Wilson. Even in that movie that didn't end up being made with Ben Affleck directing. The pictures that we got of Slade Wilson of Deathstroke was good. Like he looked good. Like the character design was solid, and I could, like, even if I didn't like the Ben Affleck Batman, the Deathstroke looked pretty good. That was going to be in that solo movie. In terms of other locations that he shows up in a couple animated movies. A lot of Teen Titans, original Teen Titans. He even shows up in Teen Titans Go. I can't comment on those because I don't watch Teen Titans Go. Yeah, I think he's an A tier. He's obviously below Harley Quinn, but he's an A tier. Deathstroke is a great character. And in the Injustice games, I think Injustice 1 is the only one he shows up in, isn't it? He was good in that game. So there you go. Next up is who the heck is this? Who is that? Whoops. Firefly. Okay. It looked like he was holding a machine gun, but it's a flamethrower. I enjoy Firefly a lot, but that's not to say that he's had great representation. In Bad Blood, the Batman animated movie, he's killed off, much like most of the C and D tier villains in that movie, which is very sad. There was going to be a Brendan Fraser Firefly, which was in the Batgirl movie that got canned by HBO. I believe a female version of Firefly shows up in Gotham. I didn't see that, so I'm not going to comment on it. He has a good boss fight in Arkham Origins, probably the highlight of that game, honestly. Other than that, Firefly has just kind of been a background kind of character. Even in Arkham Knight, like the sequences where you chase him are not that interesting. But I would say it's more interesting than what has happened with, like, at least Firefly has a really good boss fight, which would put him above Hugo Strange and Professor Pig and Azrael, in my opinion, in D tier. I'm telling you, it's rough. I don't want to put Man-Bat and Firefly and Bane into the D and F tiers, but in terms of representation across the board, that's just where they gotta go. Here we go. Finally, a character that I enjoy that has actually had great presence in media. That's the Mad Hatter. In Arkham City, had a small role, but it was a big boom to the love for his character, where he brainwashes Batman. And then in Arkham Origins, he had a Scarecrow-esque kind of storyline where you go through like this little Alice in Wonderland world. In Arkham Knight, he had a decent DLC where you go through all the other games and eventually fight him at the end. Outside of video games, he's also had a decent amount of other media he's been in. There's an entire run of the Dark Knight New 52 where he has a very strong story to him. I love that run of the Dark Knight. I think the Dark Knight for the New 52 is just an amazing run of comic books. It's sad that it ended the way it did, but what are you going to do? He also had a decent role in Bad Blood, but ends up getting his head blown off by Alfred, which was not my favorite. If you don't know, Batman Bad Blood is one of my least favorite animated movies simply because so many characters die. It's kind of absurd. Other than that, he's kind of become more of a beloved character than even Clayface. Not more than Catwoman, of course, but I think the Mad Hatter has great representation. I saw the clips of him from Gotham. It's one of the rare things that I actually saw from that show after like the second season. And decently done. Not that bad. So Mad Hatter is going in the B tier. Next up is Hush. And right away, I can already tell that he's probably going to stay in the C tier. He has a great comic book series, but the animated movie based on the comic book series is not that great. It does not follow the comic books hardly at all. In the Arkham games, he has a side mission in Arkham City, which culminates with him revealing that he's sewn pieces of people's flesh to his body to look like Bruce Wayne. But that's really it. And then in Arkham Knight, it's a literally 5-minute mission where you just punch him in the face or you throw a batarang at him. In terms of other places that we've seen Hush in, there really isn't that. I mean, other than the comic books, you don't really see him too much. So in terms of representation, I think he has a little bit less representation than Deadshot. But it's better representation, but it's not a lot of representation. So I think he's going to stay in C tier. Next up, if you can't tell by this lovely suit, is Two-Face. And Two-Face is another one of those characters who's widely popular, but hasn't always had the best representation in terms of like live action tellings of his character. In Batman Forever, I think he's a bit too wacky, and that might be just a Joel Schumacher thing, but Two-Face was definitely way too wacky in my opinion. I like Two-Face when he's more of like a evil lawyer kind of thing going on, where he obviously he's a gangster, but he uses the coin and he's the judge and jury and execution and all that stuff. And in Batman Forever, like, it's a great performance, but it's not like a Two-Face performance. It's like a wacky, crazy Joker-esque performance, which is not what I want in a lot of my Batman characters. Like, the Joker is the Joker for a reason, right? Which I don't even have the Joker here. I think I forgot to download his picture. Let me do that real quick. But for Two-Face, Arkham City, he's decent in that. And I can't really remember a comp. I mean, I guess the Long Halloween, he's good in that. So I think we're gonna keep him in C tier. I think he's had some rough times. All right, the Joker. I can't believe I forgot to put the Joker in here. Joker obviously has a lot of representation across the board. Much like Batman, he's a staple in the DC universe, and he's had a lot of representation. He's had a lot of different versions of the character as well. Just looking at the New 52 run of his character, he has at least 3 versions. One where he cuts his face off, another where he essentially becomes normal in a way, another version where he is like a sly businessman. They also revealed that there's like multiple Jokers working at the same time during the series, which was a twist that like I think you could see coming, but also doesn't really make a lot of sense in terms of the character. The versions of the Joker that we've seen in movies have been pretty good. The only one that I would say is abysmal is the Jared Leto version of the Joker, which just was really terrible. But Jack Nicholson, Mark Hamill, Joe DiMaggio, the original Joker from the 60s, I forget the guy's name, who it's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember it right now. Jack Nicholson, of course, amazing performance as the Joker. It's an S tier. Is it above? If it is, I mean, I think there's been more. I think there's been better performances of Joker than Batman. So I think I'm gonna put Joker above Batman here. Black Mask. Black Mask is immediately pulled down by Arkham Origins and the fact that he's only a cameo in Arkham City. He also really, I mean, his comic book appearances are sometimes fun, but not great. The Gotham version of his character doesn't really even feel like Black Mask. And I can't really recall any other locations that I've seen Black Mask. I think he would be at the bottom of D tier here. Mr. Freeze is one of those characters who has gone through a bit of a transformation as we've seen him throughout the years. He started off as just like your average villain, but now he has more of a heartfelt story to him, which has been, of course, popularized by Arkham City and the DLC for Arkham Knight. Obviously, throughout the comic books, he's also had a bit of a couple changes there. He also had a very good animated Sub-Zero, Batman animated series Sub-Zero, which was a great movie, I guess you could say. I've always really enjoyed Mr. Freeze as a character, especially now that he has more of a story to him, because he's not just like the thug who has a freeze gun. He is actually like, trying to save his wife, and he'd do anything for his wife, even go to a life of crime for her. I don't think there's really been a bad performance for Mr. Freeze, except for, yes, there's always the asterisk, except for the Gotham version of Mr. Freeze. It is just a bizarre, wacko type character that I can't really get behind. So that's why he's going in the A tier, not the S tier. Killer Croc. Arkham Asylum, great character. Love the little like mini boss fight you do with him in the sewers. Has a cameo in Arkham City. Shows up in the DLC for Arkham Knight. Has a pretty poor representation in Arkham Origins. Has a couple animated movie appearances. I'm pretty sure he's killed off in Bad Blood as well. Or it could be... maybe that was Killer Shark. Doesn't matter. In Suicide Squad, pretty weird design for the character. I know that the movie won an Oscar for the costumes, but Killer Croc was not it in that movie. Man, comic book wise, he's had a bit of a weird history. Even the animated TV show as well. He used to be he used to have like a little girl walking around with him. Now he's obviously more of like he's actually a mutated shark, so he's doing more mutated shark things, but he had a weird stint there for a little while. I would say Killer Croc, probably C tier, bottom of C tier. I'd probably put Harvey Dent above Hush and Deadshot, I think, and Tim Drake. Yeah, there we go. That feels better for me right there. Killer Croc above Hush as well. Next up, we have Jim Gordon. I think Jim Gordon's another one of those characters that you really can't get wrong, right? As long as he's the police commissioner and he's not corrupt, I think you got a winner on your hands. Which is exactly what Gotham, the TV show, did wrong. They actually had Jim Gordon be like a bit of a dirty cop, and I was like, how does this fit his character again? He like shoots before he asks questions too. Like he shoots Poison Ivy's like father, and he ends up not even being the villain. He shoots like the balloon man before he's even like he asks him any like you're supposed to bring these people in, not shoot them on the spot, which I think is really where the Gotham TV show falters in terms of in terms of Commissioner Gordon. In terms of popular media, he's gone from being like a fat funny guy, not funny, but like a fat commissioner in like the the Batman 89 and Returns and Forever and Batman and Robin, to being more of like the Gary Oldman style, where he's he's older, but he's still got some pep in his step, all that. The New 52 really shook Jim Gordon on his head because they put him into a bat suit essentially when Batman was out of commission, which is a very bizarre decision, especially because they de-aged him, which was really weird because he already showed up in the comic book several times as like an older gentleman. But like I said before, you really can't go wrong with Jim Gordon. I think he's had strong representation over the years. Probably even better representation than Catwoman. B tier. Actually, bottom of A tier. The Penguin. Oh boy, you know me. I do enjoy the little guy, but I think he had a lot of potential in Arkham City. They kind of dropped that potential in Arkham Knight. Arkham Origins, I don't even want to talk about his performance there. Just a very bizarre appearance of the character. In the comic books, there was a point where I thought that they were actually going to replace the Penguin, but of course you can't replace the Penguin. But another guy like built up his career inside of Penguin's organization, took over and called himself Emperor Penguin, which I thought was a cool thing, but we're probably never going to see Emperor Penguin again, ever. But I will say that the original Penguin is a classic character. The 60s version of the Penguin is iconic. The Batman Returns version of Penguin with Danny DeVito is iconic. The Gotham version of Penguin is not terrible, I would say, especially towards the end when his design looks more like he should look, I guess. The The Telltale version of the Penguin, I did not like at all. I thought that it was just a weird take for his character. I think that the Penguin is going to go right where I was going to put Jim Gordon, which is above Catwoman, but below Poison Ivy in the B tier. Ra's al Ghul. I'm going to go really fast with these last few because we're way over time. Ra's al Ghul, bottom of B tier. Actually above Clayface, I would say. Victor Zsasz, surprisingly a good amount of representation. Most of it good. Even the Gotham TV show where he shows up is decent enough. I would put him at the top of C tier probably. No, below Damian Wayne, I guess. Next is Scarecrow. Has had a lot of great representation. Better representation in Batman Begins than in Rise, but actually decent representation in most media that he's in. Maybe even a little bit better than Mr. Freeze, honestly, in A tier. Harvey Bullock is kind of a weird one. I would put him in like bottom of D tier. The Ventriloquist has not really appeared in anything other than, I think, Gotham, and even then it wasn't that great. Bottom of F, honestly. Jason Todd, aka Red Hood, top of A tier. Actually right around Damian Wayne. I'm sorry, Dick Grayson, actually, because the Gotham Knight version of the character kind of brings him down a little bit. Pink Flamingo needs more representation, but he has no representation at all. Mostly above Killer Moth, actually below Killer Moth, less representation. Calendar Man is surprisingly a very popular character, not like super popular in terms of like, oh, he's everywhere, but more popular than you'd actually expect. I'm not gonna do anything crazy with him, but he is actually above. Oh man, I would probably put him above. Well, I probably put him right below Deadshot, really. So there you go. There's my ranking of Batman characters in terms of their representation in DC, throughout movies, video games, comic books, and etc. that I know of. Obviously, there's a lot of representation with all these characters, most of these characters in the comic books, but where you really start to get some variance is in the other media like movies and video games and stuff like that. Just to go through it real quickly, in the S tier we got Alfred and the Joker and Batman. A tier, Riddler, Harley Quinn, Deathstroke, Scarecrow, Mr. Freeze, Jim Gordon. B tier, Nightwing, Jason Todd, Poison Ivy, Penguin, Catwoman, Mad Hatter, Ra's al Ghul, and Clayface. C tier, Damian Wayne, Victor Zsasz, Kite Man, Two-Face, Tim Drake, Deadshot, Calendar Man, Killer Croc, and Hush. D tier, we got Bane, Firefly, Hugo Strange, Professor Pig, Azrael, Black Mask, and Harvey Bullock. And then F tier, unfortunately, we have Man-Bat, Ratcatcher, Killer Moth, Pink Flamingo, and Ventriloquist. There you go. That's the list. Boom bada bing. We are way over time at this point, folks. So I will bid you all adieu. But I appreciate everyone for swinging by, saying what's up. Maybe not saying what's up, but just anyone lurking, anyone chatting, etc. Always appreciate that. If you want to re-listen to this podcast in VOD version, it'll be available next Thursday. If you missed anything, of course, you can always swing back around there. If you want to check out the next episode of this, we do it live every other Thursday, so the next episode will be on the 16th of May. We will definitely be talking about the Fallout TV show, because I will definitely have it finished by then. And other things, of course. We're still streaming Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. We're playing SteamWorld Heist right now. May the 4th is actually on a Saturday. So instead of playing SteamWorld Heist, I think I'm gonna pull out a Star Wars game. I'm not sure which one yet, but there will be Star Wars on Saturday. Don't you worry. I might actually pull out the N64. No, maybe not. We'll see. I'm not sure what I'm gonna play yet, but I'll figure it out by then. And then this weekend there will be another episode of Ferret 64. We got a lot to talk about, including, but not limited to, another Crab's Treasure. So there you go. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. I am YemmytheFerret. I appreciate you all. Have a good night. I will talk to you tomorrow. So long.